before, but thanks not only for the calls and for putting up signs and everything else, but I travel around the state and I hear it every time I come here in the Chippewa Valley. People say, you know, how do you put up with all this? How do you and the boys, because we've had all sorts of things. We've had a couple thousand people busted in front of our house, not the governor's residence, but our actual house where we live in Wauwatosa. We've had our kids targeted on Facebook, the 2 teenage boys, our son's Matt and Alex. We've had all sorts of awful things. And I said, what you don't see, you see that in the news, but what you don't see is literally not only here at victory centers, not just at party or campaign events. I was just down the way, just on Chippewa Falls at a company just a few minutes ago. I heard it there from guys on the line. I hear it all over the state of factories, farms, and small businesses. People come up and say, Governor, me and my family pray for you. And I can't tell you how much that means.
Amen.
I realize you gave me the applause. Now, the two things I want to mention right off the bat. One is I know at this office, like most every other office, is on the second most popular walker. Because many of you had my mother's chocolate chip cookies. Pat Walker's more sought after than Scott Walker. But the other thing is, and I know you gave a round of applause before, but anybody who can be here on any day, let alone your 94th birthday, that's pretty special. That's a great excuse to tell to your friends and your neighbors who haven't been at the office yet. If somebody can be here on their 94th birthday, there's no excuse for anybody else not to be here. But we got 13 days to go. 13 days to go. No time to let up. No time to back down. We stood up last year, and we stood up against the special interests to say we're going to stand on the side of the taxpayers. If you give me the chance after June 5th, I'm going to continue to stand up every day I'm in office for the hardworking taxpayers of Wisconsin. It's interesting because the reason for this recall election keeps changing. Seriously, early on, initially, it was about the reforms. They don't talk about that anymore. Why? Because they work. We have documented more than $1 billion. It's a B, $1 billion worth of savings for the taxpayers of Wisconsin. And for the first time in 12 years, property taxes went down on a median value of home. It's working here in the state of Wisconsin. Well, then what was it next? Well, then they moved on. Then it all wasn't about the reforms. It was about the budget not really being balanced, right? Well, they don't talk about that anymore. Why? Because, well, we documented that Wisconsin now has a $154 million surplus for the first time ever in 2 consecutive years. We put money in the rainy day fund. We showed you can balance the budget. You can do it without we not only balanced the budget with a surplus, we did it without raising taxes. We did it without massive layoffs like you see in other states. We did it without cutting things like Medicaid. In fact, the important thing to remember when you see those ads out there, I not only didn't cut Medicaid, I added money to Medicaid. I put more money into Medicaid than any governor in Wisconsin history. That's a program. Medicaid funds Badger Care and Family Care. What I just said, though, is I want a sustainable system, so I put in place reforms to ensure that needy families, children, and seniors will have it for years to come. And so we're not going to make it a permanent entitlement. We're going to make it a step up as people get back into the workplace. But we added more money to Medicaid to make that work. Not what you hear out there in the ads, but it's the truth. We did all those things to balance the budget. And we did it ultimately through long-term structural reforms so that not only is our state budget balanced, but our local government budgets can be balanced, not just for today, but for years to come. What we did was ultimately about thinking more about the next generation than we did about the next election. And isn't that what this is all about? Now, the interesting part about that is, so first it was about the reforms, but they don't talk about that anymore because it works. Then it was about the budget, but I don't talk about that anymore because it's working. Well, then for a while, and you still see the ads out there, even though the facts prove them wrong, they said it's about jobs, right? Yeah. It's about jobs. Well, I agree it is about jobs. You see, unlike the numbers they used before, which were just a sample of 3.5% of all the employers in the state, Last week the numbers came out, the official numbers came out that show a survey of nearly every employer in the state. The numbers that all the economists agree, including one that I saw on TV, had given money to Tom Barrett, and he still agreed that the numbers we pointed to last week are the true and accurate numbers of the state of Wisconsin. They showed in 2011 we gained jobs. Since I've been sworn in as your governor, Wisconsin has gained more than 30,000 new jobs in the state of Wisconsin. I think it's clear we want to go forward. We want to use that positive foundation for success that we built to move this state forward. We don't want to go backwards. We don't go backwards. We brought, through our actions, through our reforms, and I say we, because it's been me, it's been Rebecca Clayfish, who you need to vote for as Lieutenant Governor, it's been Terry Moulton and other brave souls.
Yeah!
We put in place reforms that are moving the state forward, that are building the foundation for success, so we have better lives and more jobs and a better state and communities to live in. But we don't want to go backwards. See, the counter is, as we've lowered the unemployment rate to the lowest it's been since 2008 at 6.7%. At the same time, during the last 8 years, my opponent, the mayor of Milwaukee, has seen unemployment in that city go up 28%. It's over 10% right now. We're at 6.7%. Milwaukee's over 10%. Why is that? Well, since my opponent's been the mayor of Milwaukee, taxes and fees in that city have gone up 43%. 43%. It's now one of the poorest cities in the entire country. That's why unemployment went up 28%. Now, I've said time and time again, we don't want Wisconsin to become like Milwaukee. We want Milwaukee and any other city that's in trouble to become more like the good that we've done in Wisconsin. So we're ready to move forward. It's 13 days. 13 days, things are looking good. I think the truth is on our side. We're heading in the right direction, but we can't let up. Last Friday, you saw the statewide public employee unions came out and said they're pouring more money into attack ads. They started running them this week already. They're going to run heavy for the last 2 weeks. They brought people and money in from outside of this state, from Washington and Chicago and Nevada, you name it, places all across this country, because they're not conceding this election. They're not conceding it at all. And so what we have to do is counter it the good old-fashioned. We have to do it through grassroots. We made last Saturday here and across the state, we made more than 209,000 calls to voters in the state by volunteers, not paid staff. Volunteers in this state, and victory offices like this and others, made more than 209,000 calls to voters. Before that last weekend, we had made more than 2 million calls to voters by volunteers. That in just the short period of this recall election, that's more calls than we made in the entire